Hello, WI Beginning Band. We are on a mission to rock, and here we are with Soundtrap, an online music program that you can collaborate with your friends online, just like you would with a Google Doc. And we're going to use this to create our foundation and our drum beat for We're on a Mission to Rock. So when you get this in your Google Classroom, you're sent a link and you end up on Soundtrap. The first thing you're going to do is to click over here where it says Studio. And that should take you to two choices. One is to create a music project or a podcast. Now, this is a very powerful platform. So if you want to explore the podcast ideas, again, you're able to share with other people and do a podcast from different locations onto the same recording window so that you have a complete podcast. But we're going to click on music, and as we go in here, there are a number of different things that we can do to create new tracks here, and we can just quickly look at that. If you click on add new track, it gives you these 8 different ways to input music into Soundtrap. Very similar, again, to GarageBand. If you have you want to do your voice or use a microphone, you can use the same microphone that is on your tablet or on your computer. Again, as we go through them, piano and keyboards, there is one that's on the screen, but it's kind of hard to play. But if you have a USB cable, you can connect that and connect to a whole number of different sounds. Again, different interfaces you might need for guitar or bass. The drums and beats we're going to explore in just a second. Using guitar and bass amps to augment your inputs, synthesizer strings. There's so much that we're going to have to keep exploring this over the next couple of weeks as again, we can thank Mr. Day at the middle school as he hit me to this program just last evening, and I bring it to you. So I'm going to try and do this in less than 5 minutes, and today we're really going to be looking at drums and beats, but I'm not going to access it through here. I'm going to click off this and go back to this little menu. Again, you can invite your friends here and share, which is really, really cool, and that's what I'll do at the end for all of you. You could import files so that if you wanted to play along with a song in your iTunes library, again, you can do that. Playing the synth, these are virtual instruments. Again, you can play on the screen, but if you have a USB cable that connects your keyboard at home, then you open yourself up to controlling all these sounds that are inside. The loops are what make this very similar to GarageBand, is that you can click here for the browse loops, but you also have it up here in the corner. Whenever I click on this, you get this whole loop station here of just all sorts of crazy loops, again, that will fit each other. They're programmed to do the same thing you might have happen. You can't really even hear that, but to sync up with each other, just like you would do in GarageBand. Well, we're not going to be using the loops. We're going to stay focused on creating a beat. And since we're on a mission to rock, we are going to be doing the snare drum and bass drum easy part. It doesn't matter if you're a drummer or not. You can look at the music that's provided for percussion easy, and we're going to sequence, and that means we're going to use what I just brought up here, a drum sequencer to create the first 8 measures. So on this screen, when I clicked onto the Beatmaker, I have this pattern at the bottom that is similar to what we did in Drumbit and other online drum machines, where we have 16 different choices where you might click a instrument to go in, or if you click a second time, it will stop. It also activates the loop so that you can listen to it. In this pattern window, which you see right in the middle there, in this pattern window, you can only record one measure of music. So that's why it's looped only with one measure. And you can see there's even a lock on there. So there's only one measure. And here is that measure. And for us, we're going to input a kick drum and a snare drum, just like we have on our music. So in the first measure, let's do that right now, we have a pair of eighth notes, and then a snare drum on beat 2, then another pair of eighth notes, and a snare drum on beat 4. Let's see what that sounds like. I'm going to press my space bar. Now, first thing I notice is that the tempo is very fast. So I'm going to go right down here at the bottom, and I see my tempo here is at 120. I think we're going to bring that down to 96. And I press confirm. I can also turn the metronome on if I want to listen to it. So when I'm, if I hadn't inputted any of these, again, all I do is click on them and they disappear. So now my metronome is playing on the beat. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now to the right of the metronome is a little settings. I chose the clave because it's higher pitched than the bass drum and the snare drum, and I could hear it. I could choose a hi-hat setting if I wanted to, or any of the other ones, and go back to the clave. I could also turn the volume up if I needed a little bit more volume. And so I'll keep that going right now just to help me program the beat. Again, we're in the first measure. Let's do this again. We have 2 eighth notes on beat 1 from the kick drum, then a snare, and then another pair of eighth notes on the kick drum and a snare. So we end up with 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Now, the default drum sound can be changed, and if I click here, I can look into a whole list of different choices. And now if I go all the way to the top, I have all the different drum kits. I like the clean red. If you notice, if I change it to that, it's a little bit more appropriate for We're on a Mission to Rock. Go ahead and you can, play around with all the other different drum kits that are in there, or within each sample, see where the kick is. There's a little caret next to that pointing down. If I click on that, it'll show me a bunch of different choices I can pick right there as to which different sounds I want to use. But we're going to keep that at kick drum. I like my sounds. Again, I pick the different kits in here. And I'm going to press the space bar because I got a measure of music. Now, if I look at the music that's on the page, I notice that the first 7 measures are exactly the same. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to just spread this out through 7 measures. And now I have 7 measures of that same beat. Now, again, because we're in this edit mode here for a beat generator, I would have to go into the instrument mode to listen to it. And otherwise it just keeps looping it. So here we have our first 7 measures. And of course everybody's like, wait a second, what's that at the bottom? There's a virtual drum machine. Yes, it is. And you can use your keys on your keypad to play it. You notice A is the bass drum and D is the snare drum, right? So you can play it live. And all these keys here down here show you how to record it live. And it's great practice. Again, you definitely wouldn't want to have the metronome going. But for our purposes today, we're actually going to sequence it because it's faster. And we'll do that in the next lesson. We'll record some live drums. It shows up a number of different challenges. So we've got our 7 measures here. We need our 8th measure, and if I look on the music, I notice that it is different. So we're on the second line, the last measure, right before the repeat. Again, we're sequencing the first 8 measures of the snare drum and percussion music, the melody right at the top of the page, and in the 8th measure, we'll go back to now patterns. Now, I'm going to take my locked loop here and drag it over to where I'm working on. And you'll notice now my pads are all empty. And I'm going to just sequence that last measure. If you look, here's the kick drum. Again, stays with the pair of eighth notes on one, but the snare drum actually joins it too, right? And then it plays by itself, quarter notes all the way through the measure. So you have, they play eighth notes together, then a quarter note, eighth notes with the quarter note, and the snare drum finishes it off. Let's take a listen to that. If I press play, and it just loops it. Now let's go back to our instrument form here. And again, there's the patterns where we're creating it, sequencing it. There's the instrument portion where we can listen to it and we can see the entire track, right? So the piano roll is another look where you are actually choosing different keys that are representing, in this case, the drums. But if you're using a real instrument, you can use the piano roll to create music as well. Again, this program has many, many different facets to it that I say you should explore. And in fact, that is this lesson, is just to now go and explore. But let's go back to what we're doing. We've got our eighth measure there. The one thing I'd like to do, I'm going to go back into my instrument look here, because I'm going to click on this thing over here, which is, to me, it's just the looper function. When I click on it, it activates the loop. They call it the what? Let's take a look at that. It is called the cycle mode. So now the cycle mode is on, and you can change the length of it. We want 8 measures. Right up through 9, because if you notice, there's a repeat. So if I take my cursor to the beginning and I start it, we should have the first 8 measures: melody line, drums and bass, snare, bass drum and snare drum. Measure 2, measure 3, measure 4, measure 5, measure 6, measure 7, here it goes, measure 8, repeat. So now we've got our drum beat for We're on a Mission to Rock. I think the next instrument's gonna have to be the baritone horns and the trombone. Let's add that next.